On today's episode, we'll preview the first of 4 Central Division matchups between the Blackhawks and Wild and go through the Wild's red-hot month of November, the Hawks hanging around at the quarter mark of the season, and much more on this crossover episode of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Wild.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
Hey, this is Marcus Foligno, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now your number one sports podcast network, where we're proud to bring you your team every day. I'm Jack Bushman, host of Locked On Blackhawks, and with the Minnesota Wild coming to Chicago for the first of 4 meetings here this season, thought it would be a perfect time to get together with Seth Toupal, the host of Locked On Wild, for the first time in a little while. Seth, my man, it's been a little bit, as I just said, since we've gotten together. Hope everything's been treating you well, and sure looks like it has, at least from what the Wild have been doing on the ice here over these last few weeks.
Yeah, I guess it really is as simple as just flipping the calendar from October to November. What a Jekyll and Hyde the last couple of months have been for the Minnesota Wild. You start the season at 3-6-3. Worst penalty kill in the league at that point. You're giving up just under 4 goals per game. It's there. Everything's on fire. Dogs and cats are living together. It's just an absolute calamity through the first month of the season, which led me to saying that it felt like the Wild needed to make a trade to spark something, because they looked like they didn't have anything going right on the ice. Flip to November, and the Minnesota Wild are one of the best teams in the league. They're tied with the New York Islanders for second in the entire NHL as far as points go. They're 9-1-1 in November. They've given up 17 goals in 11 games. Penalty kill has been great. Matt Boldy is just taking the league by storm this year. The goaltending's been superb. The defense has been excellent. It looks like a completely different team than what we saw in the first month of the season. And we did get Matt Zuccarello back after missing the first few weeks, which certainly factored in. But I think I've seen a lot of reactions to like what changed. What changed between October and November that led to this team flipping the switch? And I saw somebody say that the Wild went from trying to be like this run and gun team to just playing to their strengths, which at this point is playing stingy defense, getting good goaltending, and trying to wear down their opponents to leave them nothing in the tank by the time the game is over. And ever since, I mean, they have scored first in 12 straight games. They haven't trailed in 8. They haven't trailed for even a second in the last 8 straight games. It has been, honestly, it reminds me of what we saw last year at the beginning of the season. That spark is back. The team is just killing it, and it's a lot more fun to keep an eye on them when they're playing like this.
Yes, the Hawks are sure going to have their hands full tomorrow night at the United Center. Wild have won 5 in a row, points in 8 consecutive games. You mentioned 9-1-1 here this month. Should be another real stingy test for the Hawks, who are coming off of a 1-0 loss their last time out to the Colorado Avalanche, the top team in the NHL, who only have 1 regulation loss still on their record at this point in time. So some tough tests for the Blackhawks here. But before we kind of talk a little bit more about the Wild, Seth, and dive deeper into that 3-6-3 month of October compared to the 9-1-1 start so far here in November, got to talk to you about Kirill Kaprizov and signing that monster deal just before the start of the season. I know it's a little bit of old news now, as it happened almost 2 months ago at the time of this recording, but we haven't gotten together on the show since that happened. So definitely wanted to get through or go over your thoughts on that, because I know you were someone who was very confident that it was going to wind up getting done. You texted me that you were keeping receipts out there. So I'm sure you were very happy that the two sides, despite some of the reporting leading up to that point, they finally reached an agreement on an 8-year, $136 million contract extension, $17 million AAV, richest deal in NHL history. Give me a little bit of a rundown on your reaction and thoughts on the contract and the two sides finally reaching a conclusion.
That notebook that I held up was said receipts for the people that have. I keep that at my desk for all of those that were like, you got to trade him. He doesn't want to be here. Turns out he does. And yes, is it an overpay? Yeah, it's probably a couple million over what you would like to be paying a guy like that. But it's just the difference between having him and not having him is so polar opposite that you just have to eat whatever the excess is. You just have to eat it. Like if the Wild were going to let him go over $1 or $2 million, I got news for you. Like you're going to be just fine. $2 million shorter than you would have been. And it's funny because his performance this year, he's top 20 in the league in points, but a lot of people feel like he kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. Like he's producing, but he's turning over the puck like crazy. That has stabilized since Matt Zuccarello came back into the lineup. He's still doing the Kaprizov thing, and I'm just so happy that he's doing it here, as opposed to doing it for somebody else and having to say, "Man, I wish he was still doing that here."
Right, 100%. And it felt like a move that the Minnesota Wild they had to get done. If he was willing to come back, they had to give him that price tag because they are undoubtedly, you've seen what's happened with Minnesota when he's been out of the lineup, what they've looked like with and without him, right? And they had to get this done, even if it did cost them a little bit extra and maybe spent a little bit more than they would have necessarily liked. He was a piece that they 100% had to bring back because he's one of those few game changers in the league, and those types of guys don't grow on trees. So I was happy for you that the two sides finally came to a conclusion. As someone who has to play him a bunch in the Central Divisions, maybe not so much. But obviously he's helped Minnesota get off to this strong start here to the season, particularly over the last month. And it was kind of funny, Seth, because ahead of this matchup, I was looking at the stats, see what, the Wild players have been producing so far this year. And I think it goes to show just what caliber of player Kirill Kaprizov is, because I think he has 27 points in 23 games, which above a point per game. You just referenced he's top 20 in the league in scoring. And I was like, Kirill's off to a little bit of a quiet start here. And but in hindsight, he's over a point per game still, but it's, just what he's capable of, and the caliber that he was playing at early last year before he unfortunately suffered that injury, but obviously has been crucial behind what the Wild have done so far here in November. But before we talk on that, Seth, I do want to dive a little bit deeper into what you think went wrong. I know you talked about what the change was for Minnesota, or what people at least have been saying online a little bit, but what do you think did go wrong for them out of the gates early on this year, where they dropped 9 of those opening 12 games and had everyone a little bit concerned?
I think it was a whole cycle of things that are all interconnected that were causing major problems with this team. I think the scoring was probably the biggest problem. The Wild were dead last in the league in the month of October as far as 5-on-5 goals go, which for those that are not as in-depth hockey fans, 5-on-5 scoring is you play primarily on 5-on-5 throughout the standard NHL game. So it is the metric that is most important. If you can't score in 5-on-5, probably not going to win a ton of games. And the Wild didn't early on. They've started to get better production from just other spots in the lineup. Marcus Johansson has been fantastic this season after a couple of really just odd years, like 11 goals and 20-ish points is all he was producing at a second line level. It's like, that's not what we need. Yeah. So guys have just progressively kind of stepped up their performance. And I think the defense getting on the same page as the goaltending, I think that's probably the biggest, because those two areas are so intertwined and so connected. If your defense is playing terribly and missing assignments, you're gonna wreck your goalies. So getting all that shored up, I think, has helped all the other areas kind of get righted as well. And it's taking a ton of pressure off now that the defense is playing the way that they are. But other than that, I mean, I don't want to like single out one particular player, but Vladimir Tarasenko has come out of the lineup, and it seems like everybody else has picked up their performance. Not to hate on the guy, but it's written in the stats. It's in the stats.
And I mean, the proof is in the pudding with the record that the Wild have rattled off here over their last 11 games. And I know a huge part of that, Seth, has been the goaltending that they've received so far this month. Jesper Wallstedt in particular is someone who I've brought up frequently here on the show. He was a prospect that I enjoyed covering before he got selected by Minnesota, and, going through podcasts on the summer, being prospect heavy at that time of the year, you get to kind of scope through some prospects that don't even wind up being a part of your team because you only get to select one guy in the NHL draft, right? But he was someone I really thought was going to be a capable NHL goaltender, and kind of went through some struggles last year down in the AHL as well, but has found his form over the last month as he's got a 5-0-0 record with a .99 goals against average, .970 save percentage, and 3 shutouts in 5 starts during that stretch. I know Philip Gustafsson also has a shutout here in November, so 4 shutouts for Minnesota here this month. That'll definitely help you get things back on track and turn that early season record around. Talk to me about Jesper Wallstedt and this goaltending tandem that's really been key for Minnesota this year.
It's funny because I look often to one of the rival teams in the Central Division. Jesper reminds me so much of Jake Ottinger when he's in the net. Like he is so structurally sound and gets himself into such a good base when he is in net. And you look at that combined with the confidence that he has right now and how well he's reading the puck. There was an instance against the I think it was against the Nashville Predators or it was against the it was against somebody. I can't recall the team. I'm pretty sure it was Nashville, but somebody on the other team had a breakaway and skated out to the front of the net and tried to get Jesper to pull out to the front of the crease so they could just chip it behind him for the easy goal. He just went down to his knees and still gave himself the opportunity to kick his legs out on either side. So what ended up happening is, he kind of bit on the move initially, but he still had put himself in position to be able to kick his leg out and stop the shot. And a surefire breakaway goal turned into just another save. He is the confident. I think he's a player that thrives on the confidence. From what we've seen so far, and he's clicking on all cylinders. He is reading the puck as opposed to reacting to it, or trying to anticipate what's going on. That's where you kind of get bit sometimes as a goalie if you're trying to get to a spot and anticipate that the puck's going to be there as opposed to just reacting to where the puck is going. So I think we're just seeing how much of a mess last year was, and the team in front down in Iowa was not great. And now you get up in behind a much better defense, and he just looks fantastic.
Hey, and things aren't always linear for a young goaltender. And I think it's always foolish to go and quit on a young goaltender when they have a year dealing with those type of hiccups. Still, it's known as the position that takes the longest to fully get comfortable to play at the highest level, right? And we're seeing that Jesper Wallstedt is clearly capable of that here over these last couple of weeks. We'll see if he winds up getting the start in net for Minnesota tomorrow night at the United Center. Coming up in just a moment, everyone, we're going to turn things over. I'm going to hand it on over to Seth, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Blackhawks 10-8-4 start through their opening 22 games. But real quick, I need to talk about one of today's sponsors, which is Monarch. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether that's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. But that's why there is Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool, that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, super easy to use interface that's both available on your phone and on your laptop. And Monarch does all of the heavy lifting for you so that you can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks any longer. Go and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarch.com, and you'll also get half off on your first year. Again, that's monarch.com with our code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get 50% off on your first year. All right, segment 2. Real quick before we get into it, just a reminder to please go smash that like button, subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks or Locked On Wild on YouTube. Greatly appreciate all of your support out there, everyone. Seth, we got the first matchup of the year between the Blackhawks and the Wild tomorrow night at the United Center. Can't really call this a Central Division rivalry with the way that things have transpired since 2020 between these two teams. Since I've been the host of this show, I've seen one Blackhawks win over Minnesota. It has not been very good from my side of things. However, this Blackhawks team has shown a lot more life than they have in these last few years. It's undoubtedly the most fun team that I've covered here on Locked On Blackhawks, and I'm sure there are some Wild listeners that are interested to know what's up with the Blackhawks here so far ahead of this matchup. So this is where I'm going to turn things over to you, my friend, and go ahead and rattle off what you want to know.
Excellent. Yeah, I gotta start with I think one of the big surprises as far as between the pipes go. Spencer Knight has turned into like the answer to the question that Blackhawk fans have been wondering for years: is who is going to be the next Corey Crawford? Who's going to be the one to step in and fill the shoes in that manner? And it's crazy that a guy who is essentially just a cast off from the Florida Panthers can find his footing. It seems like he's been embraced by the organization wholeheartedly. And, you know, I would imagine you are pretty thrilled with what Spencer Knight has been able to give the Blackhawks so far this year.
Oh, 100%. He has been so crucial to what they've been able to do in the opening quarter of this season. And he's still only 24 years old. And this is really his first opportunity as a number one netminder because, like you said, Seth, he's mostly been utilized as the backup behind Sergei Bobrovsky in Florida these last few years. After being an early first-round selection by that organization, that was just a result of Bobrovsky really finding his game after losing it for a couple of years there and really steering the Panthers to back-to-back Stanley Cup titles. And that, I guess, you know, made Spencer Knight available at last year's trade deadline and turned out to be a trade that I think has, you know, worked well for both sides. Obviously, Seth Jones helped the Panthers win that second Stanley Cup and was playing a top pairing role all throughout that postseason run. But long-term wise, how Spencer Knight is now stepped into that number one goalie role. I just mentioned his age. He signed on a extension over the summer to remain here for the next 4 years. And the start that he's gotten off to has been nothing short of remarkable. And what's really been awesome about it, Seth, is the consistency that we've gotten out of Spencer Knight. And after getting acquired from Florida at last year's deadline, we saw some of the upside. We saw him, you know, making 42 saves a couple of different times, but then there would be games where he'd let in a couple of softies. That save percentage would be well below 900, and he just didn't have it on a consistent level. Well, that hasn't been the case this year. Night in and night out, he's given the Blackhawks a chance and has been such a big reason why they've been competitive in nearly all of their games this year. They've only really had two, like, forgettable flush it down the toilet type of outings, and compared to these last few years, that is a worlds of difference. So Spencer Knight, he's been playing at a Vezina caliber level early this season, right up there in the league lead in save percentage, goals against. And when you go and dive into some of the analytics for the Blackhawks, they're still not necessarily the prettiest. They're getting outchanced and out shot at even strength this year, but Spencer Knight has just done his job night in and night out and has had a lot of Blackhawks fans super stoked about what he's going to have in store in between the pipes for the future. Connor Bedard, who I'm sure we'll get to here in just a second, Seth, has been obviously the best player for the Blackhawks with the way that his start to the season has gone. But I think Spencer Knight has been the MVP with the level that he's played at so consistently and getting himself into that Vezina Trophy conversation. And I haven't heard a lot about it, but I feel like he really could be in the mix for that third goaltender spot on the United States Olympic roster potentially in February. So if I had three thumbs, I'd give Spencer Knight three thumbs up for how good he's been in the opening 22 games this year for Chicago.
As far as Connor Bedard goes, I'll phrase it this way. How sick did he get of hearing all the Macklin Celebrini discussion? It looks like he's got 13 goals, 31 points in 22 games so far this year. Didn't he have multiple hat tricks within the last week? Like, it just seems like he's like, yeah, enough. I've heard enough about Macklin Celebrini. It's time to show the world that Connor Bedard is the best young player in the NHL right now.
Connor Bedard is who we thought he was, man. He's turned into who we thought he was, and it has been beautiful to watch unfold in front of my eyeballs. What's funny is him and Macklin Celebrini are actually really good friends, which makes this like rivalry or one-on-one narrative against each other a little bit more funny, and they're frequently asked about each other. But they trained together this past summer, and I feel like getting that experience along with, Macklin, who compared to Bedard's first 2 years, definitely brought the scrappier of the defensive play and played with that more rugged style a little bit and just had more success in those dirty areas. And he still is going to have more success than Connor Bedard in that part of his game. It's just who he is more so compared to what Bedard is. But Bedard has added that to his arsenal a little bit. He's been feistier than ever. He has made strides on the defensive side of things. But the biggest difference, Seth, is that he took the next step with his skating ability. He's now turned into one of the best skaters in the NHL, and that was the main focus for him this offseason and kind of was the thing that I think held him back in his first few years from really taking over games. We know that special shot and release that he has, high-end playmaking ability, unreal creativity. He just didn't have the top speed to go and blow past guys. He mostly had to do it with his stick handling and with his edge work. Now he's a 90th percentile skater in terms of speed bursts above 20 miles per hour. Through like 5 games this year, Seth, he already had more 22 mile per hour bursts than he had in his first 2 seasons combined. So he is a lot faster than he's been in years past, and that's helped him elevate all parts of his game. I talked about his defense. That's definitely aided in that direction, but it's also allowed him to just go and blow past opposing players out there and allow his special talents to be on the forefront more frequently. And like Spencer Knight, the consistency to which Bedard has played at this year, we obviously saw some, 4 or 5 point games over the first 2 seasons, but the consistency in which he's been the most dangerous threat on the ice for either team, it's been basically every night here over these last couple of weeks. And 2 hat tricks already on the season, top 5 in points, top 10 in goals. He's becoming who we thought he was going to be by raising literally every aspect of his game. And the fact that he's still only 20 years old, my, oh my, I don't even know what this kid is going to look like when he's 27 in 7 years time, which is crazy to think about, but he's already a special player. If you watch the Blackhawks consistently these last 2 years, which I don't blame anyone for not doing, you knew he was going to become this. But the way that he's done it night in and night out of the start of the year has been incredible and so essential to the Blackhawks, kind of surprising everyone out of the gates.
Yeah, absolutely. Final one for me. Obviously, in Minnesota, the Wild have Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy as kind of their 1-2 punch. And I look at the statistics and see that Tyler Bertuzzi is currently second on the team in goals with 12. And knowing what I know about Chicago, the Blackhawks brought in Andre Burakovsky to try to add some of that depth scoring to be kind of a Nino Niederreiter maybe for the Blackhawks. And then you got Ryan Donato as well, 30-goal scorer who has got 7 goals so far. So if it's Bertuzzi, that's fine. But who do you want to see step up to be the number 2 behind Connor Bedard as the season plays out?
Yeah, the Blackhawks have gotten a lot of great depth play so far this year. You mentioned Tyler Bertuzzi, who's just been a dog off of the leash this year. And his nickname, Seth, they've been calling him the human backboard on the Blackhawks broadcast because he just goes and parks himself right in front of the net. And Connor Bedard's just firing him off his shin pads, off his stick. He's got 6 power play goals on the season. It's been pretty hilarious, but he's been awesome. Andre Burakovsky's start to his Blackhawks tenure has been awesome. Ryan Donato's kind of been bumped down the lineup a little bit as a result of Burakovsky being brought in. And some other youngsters being up on the scene. But I think the guy who really could help take the Blackhawks offense to the next level and really prove that this team is more can be contenders in the long run here this season is Frank Nazar, who still is only 21 years old. He's in his first full NHL season, but he's been utilized in that number 2 center spot and got off to a great start to the year. Scored the Blackhawks opening goal of the season in that opener against Florida, and was actually their leading scorer through the opening 5 or 6 games. Has kind of quieted down a little bit since returning from an injury that he suffered, but did still have assists in 4 consecutive games before the Blackhawks got blanked on Sunday against Colorado. Hasn't been doing it in like the most noteworthy fashion or necessarily driving play himself, but has still been finding ways to get on the stat sheet, which I think is impressive for a player of his age and guy who doesn't have a lot of experience at this level. But if he can bring that consistency up to, not that I expect him to do what Connor Bedard's doing or obviously Spencer Knight in that, albeit at a different position. I don't know if that's going to be possible out of Nazar considering his lack of experience. But if he can, really solidify that second line and the Blackhawks can get consistent scoring behind what Bedard is doing, that is going to make this offense even more lethal than it's already been with Connor Bedard becoming a superstar unfolding right in front of our eyes. So Frankie Nazar, I think, is really the guy to be circling moving forward for the Blackhawks. I think he's going to be a special piece of this rebuild, but in terms of what the Hawks can do in 25-26, I think a decent amount could potentially be riding on him in terms of how well he's going to take that next step in his development. So young players for the Blackhawks, man, have been handling their own, hanging around, as I put in the overlay of today's episode, and it's been very exciting, but they haven't been tested too hard against some Central Division teams so far. Fared well against Colorado despite losing 1-0, but it's going to be a big one tomorrow night at the UC when these teams meet up for the first time in 25-26. Excuse me. Everyone, make sure to stick with us for segment 3 as we got a couple of rookie defensemen to talk about here that have both been pretty solid to begin their NHL careers. Stick with us for segment 3 in just a moment. Real quick, though, I do got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors, which is FanDuel. The NBA season is here, and kind of like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago Bulls are off to a pretty exciting start as well, and there's no better place to get in on the NBA action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of the game or just want to ride the hot hand late, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket to those fourth quarter comebacks. And you can also wager on, for the Bulls side of things, Matas Buzelis, Kobe White, and other key members of the Bulls franchise. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a chance at a much greater payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late fourth quarter push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 worth of bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go and head on over to FanDuel.com, or you could also download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to sign up and play your game now with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Segment 3, Seth, before we get on out of here and wrap up this episode, I wanted to have a little bit of fun and go through a quick rookie report because both of our teams have young defensemen highly selected in the 2024 NHL draft that are off to pretty good starts to their NHL careers here in Zeev Buium for Minnesota and Artyom Levshunov for Chicago. Buium, I know, fell into the lap of Minnesota at number 12 in 2024, which I could not believe he made it all the way down there. The Blackhawks selected Artyom Levshunov number 2 overall in a very defenseman heavy draft that included, Carter Yakimchuk, Anton Salayev, Zane Parekh, Sam Dickinson. Like, it's going to be a fun defenseman draft class to look back and evaluate in a couple of years' time. But Seth, talk to me a little bit more on how Zeev Buium has fared through these opening 23 games. I noticed he's played every night so far for Minnesota. He's got 11 points, which fittingly Artyom Levshunov does as well. 3 goals, 8 assists for Zeev, but he was a prospect I really fell in love with this 2 summers ago. I knew the Blackhawks weren't going to take him at number 2. I felt in a different situation that would be my pick. But how has he developed so far in his first NHL season coming out of college with Denver?
First off, you just about gave me a heart attack because I was like, there's no way that Mata Buzelis is a real person. So I went and looked at the Chicago Bulls roster just to make sure. So I was like, that can't be a real person.
You don't know about Lil Boozy Vert? Put some respect on
No.
the man's name. Matas is nasty.
Well, now
man. Be on the lookout, dude.
Now I'm gonna have to learn. I'm gonna have to learn myself a little Mata Buzelis. Zeev, I think it's interesting because I would describe the first month of his season as kind of chaotic. He was racking up a ton of points on the power play, but his defense in 5-on-5 was really a work in progress. He had some turnovers and it just looked like, it was as you'd expect, trying to kind of figure out where he slots in amongst the Wild D core. And, it's funny that over the last month, his production has dipped a little bit. He's got 3 points in the month of November so far, but I think his play has been substantially better. So you kind of, you take the evening of things. He's playing more of he's kind of rotating as like the power play 2 quarterback, sometimes getting in on power play 1. But I think the strides that he's made on the 5-on-5 side of his defense have been really impressive since the season started. Every game he plays, it just looks like he figures it out a little more, which is awesome. And I'm here to tell you right now, some of the things that he has done with puck handling to deke people in front of him have caused actual audio reactions for me watching the game. I can't necessarily repeat what has been said in many of those instances, but he's fun with the puck. You can tell that he wants to win and he's got that competitive fire. And I think now that he has kind of settled as to where he slots in the lineup, I think he's been great. And those opportunities for him, long term, I think the Wild expect that he'll be the main power play quarterback. Brock Faber's obviously done a really good job of that as well. Nothing wrong with having a couple of guys that can exceed in that spot. So it's at this point more so just continuing to gain confidence and to build up his confidence as the season unfolds. And I've been very impressed with what I've seen so far.
Yeah, and it's, especially for undersized, more so offensive-minded defensemen, it's never an easy transition going into a grown man's game, and especially having to be very solid in your own end. So definitely impressive that Zeev has kind of been able to improve here on the fly, and despite not maybe racking up as many points as he did early on in the season, you feel like he's been making strides in his game. And honestly, that doesn't sound too far off from Artyom Levshunov other than kind of the point production, but he's really been making strides over the last month with his play as well. And for Artie, what's kind of, can be hair pulling about him at times is he's a rover style defenseman who kind of loves covering a ton of ice out there, which can put him in tough situations when he makes poor decisions. And that was kind of a symptom of his game going back to the preseason and maybe through the first couple of games here in the regular season, but he's really solidified his game and been more structured and put himself in the right positions defensively. And then offensively, he's just let his natural skill go over and thrive and has been bumped up to the top power play unit where he's been quarterbacking over the last month. And while most of his production admittedly has come from secondary assists and he's still looking for that first NHL goal, he's been driving play more so this past month that he did through October. And you've definitely seen an increase in his ice time because of it. He's getting more trust from head coach Jeff Blashill. So both of these young defensemen sounds like they're making progress on the fly here, and should be fun to watch them go head to head for the first time in the NHL tomorrow night at the United Center. And considering they're both still, well, Artie just turned 20. I think Zeev is still 19. I could have that wrong off the top of my head, but probably going to be the first of many meetings between these two young defensemen, and will be very fun to kind of look back at not only those two, but all of the defensemen I mentioned a few minutes ago that were taken early on in the 2025 NHL draft, and kind of see where these chips fall over these next few years, because obviously we're still early into the discussion. Don't have the greatest sample size for any of those guys, but going to be very fascinating to see how it kind of shakes out for both of these teams. But Seth, just wanted to say thank you as always, my man, for jumping on the podcast with me and for taking this time. I know it's been a little while since we've done a podcast, so thank you for giving me the scoop on the Minnesota Wild before tomorrow's matchup. So everyone on Locked On Wild, if you want to go and check me out ever before one of these games between Chicago and Minnesota, you can find me on X at Jack Bushman 2. If you want to tune into Locked On Blackhawks for whatever reason it may be, you can find Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Seth, thank you again, my man. Go and let Blackhawks fans, my side of things, let everyone know where they can find you.
You can follow Locked On Wild by searching Locked On Wilds. We got lucky, and that's pretty much every social media platform. So search Locked On Wild on all of your favorite social media platforms. You'll find everything that we're doing. Obviously, looking to kind of crank things into high gear as the season progresses. Now that we've got enough data as to what's going on this year.
Right.
So keep an eye out, because it's going to be a fun push all the way through the rest of the year. I will say, if you follow my personal account at Seth TOUPS, don't follow me for my Vikings takes, because I can't bear the pain of having any more of them this season.
What's going on with 9, dude? I thought he was a dog.
Yeah, Chihuahua.
That is a perfect way, especially for my Blackhawks fans. Perfect way to cap off this crossover edition of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Wild. Should be a lot of fun tomorrow night at the UC. Thank you again to everyone for tuning in. Go and check out Locked On Blackhawks, Locked On Wild. Subscribe to the channels for free on YouTube if you don't already. We'll catch you on the next episode.